So, very good morning to all of you and I welcome you to this last session of my course on strategic performance management. And in these two sessions basically what we are going to talk about is that how Indian companies are using performance management systems, and that is where we are going to discuss company examples related to their performance management system. And when we are going to discuss examples of various companies, we have taken examples from all kind of companies, FMCs, manufacturing, IT, services, banking. So, I will try to give you different kind of example to explain you that how performance management system has been adopted by Indian organizations, specifically in this lecture. The idea is that, see, we have already talked about the performance management system, right. We looked into the process, we looked into that what needs to be done to have an effective performance management system, right. We also looked into the role of technology, leadership, culture, right, and we also see that what needs to be done in order to make performance management system more effective. Now, in this context, we are trying to examine some examples from Indian companies to see how performance management system has been progressed and in what way they are using this performance management system. And then we need to critically examine this, that whether Indian organizations are doing better and how much importance they are giving, what is happening to performance management system in certain organizations, especially with reference to Indian context. So, in this lecture probably we are going to discuss some of the examples related to Indian companies, and they belong to all walks of life, across sector, across industry, different type of industries have been taken as an example. So, we start this discussion with the first company, that is National Thermal Power Corporation. National Thermal Power Corporation, you know, that is a Maharatna company, and they are basically into production of power, and they also own lot of mines which are used as a raw material for producing power, right. And it is a pan India company, very big company, it is a Maharatna company. Now, if you look at the performance management system, they have two different kind of performance management system. For executives, they have a system which is known as online performance management system. Okay. So, that is where they are using technology. So, they have tools and softwares that is used to measure, manage and monitor the performance of the employees, especially executives are those who are at the managerial or the senior level. Now, those who are not working at the senior level, for them they are using a manual system. Okay. So, for non-executives they are using a manual system, it means that they are not using technology or the system is not automated at all, right. Now, if you look at the difference, that why they are using two different kind of system, you can think that is since management are the people who are working at the managerial level, they are familiar with the technology, and if you remember we talked about literacy in technology, that is very, very important. But at the non-executive level, you have people working at different levels, starting with some semi-skilled, skilled, unskilled, and all kind of workers who are in the role of the company. So, for them it is not possible to have a automated system, and that is why they are using a manual system. Now, if you look at the processes that they had adopted, if you remember we talked about prerequisites, planning, execution, review, right, feedback, and then going to the renewal and recontracting. So, this is the process that we have discussed. Now, if you look at that process and the process that is adopted by Thermal Power Corporation, National Thermal Power Corporation, you find that yes, to start with that they go for performance planning. It means that they do see to it that they carry out the exercise to plan the performance of the employees at all levels, and also ensure that it is aligned with the goals and objectives of the organization, right. Now, the next step they also go for mid-year review. It means that they do not go for continuous review, right. So, after mid-year review they go for annual performance review. It means that the kind of system that they adopted is annual appraisal, right. So, another important thing is that they also use assessment. It means that they try to assess employees based upon their strength and weaknesses, and try to see that what is the performance level of the employees. After assessing, they also go for the normalization process. This normalization process is that they are using a standard to ensure whether you have achieved the performance target that is given to you or not, right. Many companies do not use this kind of processes. So, Suppose the rating that has been done, that is normalized, and the process of normalization is to see that how are faring compared to the standard process that is there, or standard benchmark that you have created for the targets and the goals, right. And through this normalization process, basically they try to ensure the kind of errors that have been there is removed, and also they have a feedback mechanism. So, this feedback mechanism basically help them to see that they try to give feedback to the employees about their performance, and the kind of feedback system that they adopted is that they call the employees, they discuss it with them, and then they try to see that what needs to be done. Okay. So, this is the performance management process that is adopted by what you call the National Thermal Power Corporation. Now, here I am giving an example to explain that how it is done, right. So, now if you look at this, this is especially correct for executives. So, what they do, if you look at this, that they first of all they try to look at the KRAs, or key performance areas. So, first of all they define the key performance areas, right, and then for each of these key performance areas they also give weightage depending upon the level that you are working, right. Now, if you look at this key performance area, you will find that more weightage is given at higher level jobs compared to lower level jobs, though the maximum weightage that you have is for KPS, because KPS is something that contributes maximum to your performance. Next is that they also look at your competencies at different level, that is your functional competencies and managerial competencies, which is so this basically it is related to your task performance and contextual performance. Then they also try to assess your potential, right. At the higher level they do not give it any weightage, because that is the highest level that you can reach. So, for that you do not require any potential, you have to have potential in order to perform well, right. And then they also try to look at the value assessment. Value assessment, that what kind of values, ethics, integrity you have, and whether it is good for the organization or not, right. Now, based on that you see that from E1 to E3 moving to E4, E5, E6, E7, that is up to E9, that is the level, right. You will find that the total weightage that is for each of these categories or grades is 100, but if you look at the parameters that has been used, there are different parameters given for different grades, right. So, if you will find that for junior executives there is a higher weightage for KPIs and functional competencies, because that is more important to them. For senior level, when you move to higher level, then it is less. So, the idea is see that you have to devise a system where you say that okay, what are the parameters against which your performance is to be evaluated, right, and then you go for a differential weightage system to see that what would be the weightage that would be given to each parameter in each grade, right. And then whatever your score is out of 100, that is used as a standard for performance, and then your performance is measured against these criteria, right. So, this example is basically meant for executives, this is not meant for non-executives, right. Now, we are moving to a different company from power sector, we are moving to an IT company. It is a big IT company, you all know about Infosys, right. Infosys, if you look at it, that they adopt a biannual process, that means that review happens twice in a year, right. And the performance management system that they use is basically commonly known as Performagic. It means that how good you have been able to perform, right, and then you go for consolidated relative rating. Relative grading means that you are going to say that how your performance is compared to others in the peer group. Okay. So, they do not go for absolute grading in evaluating the performance of the employees, but they go for relative grading, where the performance of one employee is evaluated against the performance of others, right. Now, if you look at the process for senior managers, especially are the managers, right, because you do not have workers at the lower level. So, everyone is asked to go for self evaluation, self appraisal. You remember we talked about self evaluation. Then once self assessment is complete, then they are reviewed by the team leaders, right, into one-to-one meeting, that how well you have performed, and then the project manager is going to finally review your performance, right. Now, based on this performance management record, the company is going to take certain decisions related to incentives that is to be given, which is based on performance, the level of performance that you have achieved. It is also used to take certain administrative decisions like salary and promotions. Okay. And then you also try to identify good performers, the star performers, and then you are try to reward them, okay, in using some non-financial rewards, not financial rewards. And the important thing about Infosys is that now Infosys is moving towards a more continuous evaluation and feedback process. This is a new development that which has happened. So, instead of going for annual review, biannual review, they are moving to what you call a continuous evaluation and feedback process. Now, if you look at this, that how they are going to rate performance. So, if you look at the rating, this is how it happens. It means that more or less they are using the force distribution. Okay. It means those who are on the bottom line, it means okay, the last one, it means that they have not been able to meet the expectations. Then meeting expectations partially with support from the managers and supervisors. 60% have been able to meet expectations, okay, 15% exceed expectations, and similarly you will find that 10% are star performers. The idea of using this kind of force distribution is to reward only those who first come into the first two categories. Okay. The others may not be rewarded, or the level of reward would be very less. Okay. And those who are in the last category, they may be asked to leave, or they could be asked to do switch over to other jobs which they can perform better, right. So, if you look at the kind of distribution that they have, it is more or less what we call a force distribution model, right, where you are trying to fit people into certain categories with the objective that you are going to reward only few people who are good performers or who have exceeded the performance. Now, from IT we are moving to another company which is Gas Authority of India. It is basically to the marketing of oil and natural gas products, right. This being a public sector organizations, basically this company goes for annual appraisal, okay, and appraisal happens only in those cases where the employee have completed at least 3 months probation period, right. And for managers, basically they go for self appraisal. Then from self appraisal they move to reporting officers. So, the supervisor is going to evaluate his performance. Then from reporting officer it goes to next level, that is higher level, where you have reviewing officers who is above the reporting officer and in the hierarchy, and then he is going to look at it, then put his signature, right. And once the reviewing officer reviews the performance, then this report is sent to the HR department of the regional office, okay. And then from regional office it goes to the corporate office. Now, if you look at this, you can understand that GAIL is adopting a very traditional performance management system. It is not basically a performance management system, but it is basically a performance appraisal system. Okay. So, when you are trying to look at and critically examine the GAIL system, it is not performance management, but it is what you call a performance appraisal. It is, you cannot call it performance management, because you are not going for planning the performance. You are not, you just review the performance, you do not give it feedback, simply you look at the performance level and then review it and then send it to the HR office, and from there it goes to the corporate office, and the corporate office might be taking certain decisions based on the performance of the individual, right. Now, we are moving to another oil sector company which is into the marketing of oil and oil related products, that is Indian Oil Corporation, right. Now, if you look at Indian Oil, they go for 3 kind of things, that is planning, review and assessment, right, evaluation. So, now if you look at the performance planning, that is the first stage, this they try to identify the KPIs for each job, okay, and then they try to assign weightage to each of the KPIs. For example, if you look at NTPC example, what they did for each different level of executives, they identify the KPIs, right. Once you are able to identify the KPIs, that is key performance areas depending upon the job description, then you try to give differential weightage to each of these KPIs, that how much contribution it makes to the performance of the individual, right. Now, once this kind of assignment is done, then you are ready with the KPIs for each grade in the organization, right. Then you consult with the person who is to be evaluated, okay, and if it is required you make certain modifications in the KPIs and the weightage that is given to each of the parameters that you have identified, right. And then this performance plan is sent to the reviewer, who could be a senior level officer, and he once it is approved, then that is used as a criteria for evaluating the performance, right. But IOCL also adopts a annual appraisal process. It does not go for continuous evaluation and feedback system. So, what they do basically, once the appraisal period is complete, they ask executives to evaluate their performance. So, they also go for self assessment. Okay. They rate themselves on the various criteria that has been identified based on the job descriptions and the parameters that have already been decided during the performance planning stage. Once the rating is complete, then it goes to the reviewers, who could be his immediate supervisors. He is going to validate it. He will look at the KPIs, look at your performance level and see that whether you have achieved them or not. Now, some of the problems that may come up is that some of the criteria which could be qualitative in nature, okay, that is to be verified and validated. Okay. And then based on that, whatever score you are achieving is identified depending upon the KPIs and other competencies that you have, and then it is seen that what is your total score, okay, out of say if the total score is 100, then how much you have achieved out of 100 based on all the criteria, okay, and using a differential weightage process, right. Then based on this performance, you try to provide reward to the employees, right. So, it is related to performance related pay, right. So, performance related pay, if you remember, we talked about that it is related to it is related to what you call incentives that is given for higher performance, right. And when we are discussing about pay for performance, one thing that you need to remember is that it is not related to achieving the targets or the standards which have already been identified in the performance plan. For them, there could be some weightage, but additionally if you want to link performance with the pay, it means it is based on the merit. If you have exceeded performance levels or the targets, then you need to reward it, right. So, another important issue is that for each level the rating is something like that they try to identify the level of performance, okay, starting with level 1 to level 5. So, if you are your performance is at level 1, say for example, if it is out of 100 and you have achieved a score between 1 to 24 25 or something like that, it means your level of rating is below expectations. Say if you have achieved somewhere in between 26 to 49, then moderately below expectations. So, 50 to 70, if you got something a score like this, then you it means that is the standard performance that is expected from you and you have been able to achieve it, right. If your performance is above 70, then you can say yes, it is above expectations, because you have crossed the average the standard level of performance, right. And if it is above 85 or 90, it means that it is much above the expectations, right. So, when we are going to link performance with the pay, it is based on the level of performance that you have achieved. So, depending upon what level you are, the incentives are decided, okay, and based on that you are rewarded, right. So, Indian Oil Corporation follow this policy when it comes to giving reward. Now, this is the appraisal cycle that is adopted by the Indian Oil Corporation. Now, if you look at this cycle, you can see that in the beginning of the financial year, they go for performance planning, then October, September they basically go for mid-year review, then again April they go for performance appraisal, and finally, after the performance appraisal period is over, you go for review. But if you look at this cycle and in between, you will find that they go for regular review and feedback. So, every month they conduct a review session and give feedback to the employees, whether they have been able to meet the targets and what else needs to be done in order to achieve the targets. It means that they go for continuous review and feedback of employees' performance, and it is a part of the system, right. Now, from that company we are moving to another important company, it is in a banking service, and it was in the it is one of the largest bank, public sector bank in India, right, and it has been doing well, performing well, right. So, this they have adopted a new system of performance management, which is known as and this system was adopted in 2016. Before that, they had the regular system what we call this annual performance appraisal, right. So, in annual performance appraisal they used to see that how employees have fared, okay. And now this Saksham is basically is a word where you try to see that how competent you are, what is your level of competencies, right, that is identified, right. And the idea of using this Saksham is not to see that what is your level of performance, but see whether you are competent enough to take up the job at your given level or not, right. And based on that they basically try to identify the competencies of the people, and they have certain categories, right, like AAA, double A, B and C. So, based on that you try to see that how Saksham you are, how competent you are, what is your performance level, right. So, if you are in C and B category, it means that your performance is not good or below expectations, right. But if you are in A category, it means that your performance is up to the standard, but if you move to double A and AAA, it means that you have exceeded expectations, and AAA means that it is much above the expectations that is given, right. The idea of using this this kind of performance parameter and identifying the competencies is that it is more quantifiable, okay, and see that the budget that is allocated is used effectively. So, it has three roles: budgetary, measurable and non measurable. There are certain competencies which are measurable, certain competencies are not measurable, and then you try to see that it is well within the framework of the finance that is allocated to the organization, right. The maximum weightage in SBI is given to your key result areas. It means that it is identified, and based on that if you have achieved those result areas, then you get higher weightage, plus 30% weightage is given to assessment from the supervisors, right. And it is directly linked to what you call the reward, like monetary benefits, transfers, extension of the service, right. But some of the challenges that have been there in implementing this, like earlier there were annual appraisal system which was at fault, because it was not able to capture the performance of the employees, right. And it was very difficult to actually differentiate high performing employees with low performing employees, right. And in annual appraisal system, what happened, that everybody used to score very high level. So, it was very difficult to differentiate people so far as performance was concerned. That is why they moved to this new system, so that they could classify people into 5 different categories, and maximum weightage was given to what you call this key result areas. Now, moving to a manufacturing sector, that is Tata Motors, the Tata Group companies, it is one of the best performing companies of the Tata Group. Now, if you look at this, instead of moving to annual or continuous performance system, they have two kind of assessments of employees, that is biannual and quarterly self assessment. And if you look at their process, right, it is the immediate supervisor who evaluate the performance of their subordinates. Okay. So, there is a form which is filled up by the supervisors, right, and there are certain things that is linked with the evaluation or the performance of the employees, right. It is any kind of administrative decisions they linked with that, related to performance, salary hike or other things, right. And if you are doing very well, then your salary may go up at least twice in a year, okay. And then you are also given monetary incentives for better performance, okay. And there are a lot of fringe benefits that is provided, like travel packages, okay, incremental incentive schemes, okay, and also performance linked pay, but it all depends upon how well you have been able to perform in the organization, especially, and what is your contribution to the organization. Now, if you look at this, I am taking another example which is basically into say e-retail or e-business, or this is a big bazaar. Okay. Big bazaar, if you look at this bazaar, you know that is a low cost, okay, low margin company, but which is making a good profit, because it attracts lot of customers. Now, if you look at see that how employees are evaluated in big bazaar. So, they have again have annual appraisal process, increment based appraisal is there, and if you exceed the target, then you are awarded with incentives or cash. Okay. But in most cases you will find that the level of employees is very low. Okay. So, they adopt a 360-degree approach. It means the employees are evaluated by the individual itself, maybe from the customers, right, by the fellow colleagues and also from the supervisors. So, when you are going to adopt 360-degree technique, you get a more comprehensive evaluation of the employees, okay. and in the case of Big Bazaar, all employees are evaluated comprehensively to see that how well they are performing, right. And then they also add cash incentives related to the performance. Now, moving to another company, that is Nestle, and if you look at Nestle, you will see that how they are evaluating their performance. Okay. Nestle. So, now if you look at this Nestle, you know that is a multinational company. So, moving from Indian companies to multinational companies. Now, if you look at Nestle, they have a number of parameters against which the performance is evaluated, and then the 3 levels of assessment happens. Okay. The individual, then the manager's assessment is there, and then the auditor's assessment is there. Now, if you look at some of the criteria against which they are going to be evaluated include the standards of performance, your leadership quality, ethics and integrity, your interaction, how well you interact with your customers, community engagement, right, contribution to the business, people related, what is your performance, teamwork, right, whether how effective the training and development have been. Okay. And these criteria are used by managers for the assessments, right. Then auditors also assess you especially related to the finances, that whether you have been able to control it within the budget, right, and then whether the audit has been done for this not, or then again whether you have followed all the legal rules and regulations, so you have complied with the law of the land or not. Okay. And then you have only 3 categories, below par, par and above par. Based on that, you try to see that how well you have been able to perform. Okay. So, Nestle again, if you look at and examine the contribution, you will find that Nestle has been following a annual appraisal system, and it is more traditional in nature, right. Now, the kind of rating that is done, like they try to classify people into 3 categories, right, below average, average and above average, right. And the bonus is dependent upon your performance. For example, if you have average performance, standard performance, that the rate is 15%. If it is much above the average, then it is 30%, but if you have not been able to perform well, then you are not given any bonus, right. Now, and then since it is into services, you have to see that whether customers are satisfied with or not, right. So, you go first external company surveys, right, especially whether you have been able to implement the strategy that is adopted by the organization. Okay. Then you collect data from households, you see that what was the cross sales, right, retail asset balance, market share, then objective standards like related to the especially that is more financial in nature, like revenue, expenses, profit margin. So, you calculate all these things and see that what is your performance level. So, this could be for the sales people basically, and then the criteria that is used here as an example is customer satisfaction, right. And there are certain objective standards in terms of what is your sale, right, how much market you have been able to improve, and then in terms of finances also you are being evaluated. Now, this is a different example, it is a cooperative which into the dairy business of milk products, and Amul adopts a annual appraisal system, and there if you look at the performance appraisal system, it is self appraisal. Okay. Then it is evaluated by the manager, reviewed by the manager, you can say, and then the performance appraisal is recommended by the divisional heads. So, the head of the department recommends the case and finally confirmed by the managing director of the company, right. Now, if you look at the rating, if you get good rating at the senior level, then you get special allowances, workers also get promoted, okay, and you have performance linked incentives, right. So, if depending upon the level of performance, right, you are given incentives, and it could be up to the tune of 100% also, right. So, Amul follow a very straightforward system when it comes to rewarding employees based upon their performance, right. Now, if you look at some of the attributes that is used for measuring performance is like the job knowledge, what is your performance standards, quality of work, what is the level of interest and motivation that you have, what new initiatives you have taken, and what is your past performance. And one of the attributes that is considered is seniority. Okay. While in other companies you have seen that seniority is not used as a criteria for evaluating the performance, right, and they adopt a 4 graded scale, that is from poor, satisfactory, good and outstanding. Okay. So, the level of incentives you can say that it is 0 to 25 to 50 to 100%. Okay. When you move from poor to outstanding, right. So, they use a rating scale method to evaluate the performance, and the performance is linked with the incentives of the employees, right. Now, we have discussed a number of companies and given their example to explain that how companies are using performance management system, right. Now, if you look at some of the emerging trends which has been identified through these companies, that is though a lot of companies are still going for annual performance reviews, but gradually they are moving to what you call other kind of evaluation like biannual, semi-annual or quarterly evaluation, right. So far as most of the decisions that is taken by the companies based on the performance record is related to administrative decisions, but now companies are also thinking to take certain administrative developmental decisions depending upon the performance of the employee, so that their performance could improve, right. Most of the companies have not been able to give enough control and authority to the employees, right, because they are still using the traditional performance management system. If you look at some of the examples that I have given, right. So, one of the issue that has come out is that how much autonomy and authority you are giving to the employees, because that could be a huge perk in terms of being a non financial reward, okay, that might motivate employees to perform well. Okay. Now, most of the companies are using software tools to see that how it is working. So, if you look at some of the performance management tools, remember we talked about technology and we said that we can go for EPM, that is electronic performance monitoring systems, where you go for automated tools and softwares to measure, monitor and track the employees performance and how much they have progressed, right. So, these are some of the things which have come up, but still it is in very fancy stage in many Indian organizations. Now, HR has a very important role to play, because they have to see that how they can align the goals and objectives of the individual to business and develop those competencies which is required for higher performance. Similarly, the other two issues that remember we talked about in the previous lecture is that you need to develop a culture, okay, where people are really motivated, okay, and to innovate and perform well. So, you need to develop an entrepreneurial culture, but and also use more and more technology. So, integrate technology with all kind of HR systems, including performance management system, make it automated, so that you are going to monitor it more accurately. There is a greater transparency and accountability in the system, right. Now, in one survey it was found that yes, though many companies have changed their performance management strategy, okay, but it has been found that they are not doing enough, right. They have only gone for changing their strategy, but rest of the things are more or less same, right. So, this is one example that I have given to explain. Now, I am trying to also give you something which basically talks about that how much importance is being given to performance management system across nations, right. Now, if you look at this, this is a cross country data, and lot of organizations have been actually contacted and have responded that how much importance they are giving to the performance management system in the organization. And why I am presenting this data here, if you look at it and look the case of India, okay, it means India gives maximum weightage to the performance management system compared to any country in the world. Okay. So, and if you look at some of the other companies here like India, Brazil, Mexico, China, okay, most of them are developing countries. What does this suggest? This suggests that developing countries are still not matured enough to fully implement an effective performance appraisal system, and they are taking lot of decisions which are administrative in nature based on performance data. Though they are trying to use and integrate technology with the performance management system, that they have not been able to build a culture of performance where people are driven to innovate and perform well, right. While if you look at some of the developed countries, right, like EU, Germany, Canada, Australia, France, they are not giving that much importance to performance. There are certain other parameters they are using for the taking certain decisions related to administration and the development of the employees. So, what I wanted to tell you that India is still lagging behind, and they have to move forward to build a culture, to integrate technology in a better way and see that how performance management system can be integrated better with other HR systems, how it can be used effectively not only to measure and monitor performance of the employees, because that is given more weightage in Indian context, but use it for other things, right, and develop an effective appraisal and management system in organizations, right. So, with this we are going to complete and finally, see that the kind of shift that is happening, okay, in the performance management, right. We are moving away from merit ranking to what you call appraisal, performance appraisal system, that is the present emphasis. The objective has been to see that not to take administrative decisions only, but also the development of the individual. So, the shift is from taking administrative decisions to the development of the people, right. Earlier the factors that have been rated were more personal in nature. Now, we are trying to it is going to be more outcome based, result, accomplishments and performance. The technique that we have been using was mostly the rating scales, right, but from rating scales we have moved to self appraisal, team appraisal, 360-degree techniques. So, these are the new techniques that have been used for evaluating the performance, right. And most of the companies do not go for post appraisal review. Earlier the review was done to see that how well you have performed, right, and to get the views of the employees. But now, the idea is that based on this performance review, you try to find out the development plan from the individual and also set the goals and objectives for the next performance cycle. So, this is a paradigm shift is happening so far as performance management system in India is concerned, right. So, that is all for this lecture. And finally, when we are trying to look at the overall trend that is happening, this is what you can see. The companies are trying to be more flexible, the regular check-ins means you are moving from annual or semi-annual to more frequent appraisals and evaluations, giving review and feedback. Okay. And then employers are trying to have a feeling of trust and they are trying to share the vision of the company. So, they are trying to see that the goals and objectives are aligned with the goals and objectives of the organization, right, and the focus is on not on the individual, but what they have achieved in terms of performance and how much they have learned in the process, right. And also they are trying to empower employees, they are trying to give them greater authority and control, so that they can do better, and they are also using technology to monitor and map the performance of the employees. So, these are the major trends which have emerged today. Okay. Thank you very much.